Yes, 1 minute before we start recording. Recording has started. Brother Prakash can start the session. Oh, Brother Shiva, okay.
Am I audible, Kumar?
Yes. Yes, brother.
Good evening, dear sisters and brothers. It is my pleasure to be your host for today's program. On behalf of the organizing committee for the 90-day challenge, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. I hope this will be another fruitful and engaging session. Today marks the 35th day of our 90-day challenge. This is a challenge for us to dive deeper into our sadhana, to strengthen our internal connection with Daji, to love him wholeheartedly, to remain in osmosis with him 24/7. To get to that state, we need to practice like never before, which I'm sure you all know is the tagline for this 90-day challenge. Our fervent abhyas will surely bring us to our goal. Daji has said he wants all of us to be a Kamlesh version 5000. I repeat, Kamlesh version 5000, which means it is his ultimate form, his ultimate inner being. To begin today's program, we are pleased to have our guest speaker, Brother S. Prakash. A very warm welcome to you, Brother Prakash. Brother Prakash Seshadri is known as the corporate yogi. He's the founder and CEO of Sea Change Consulting in India. He's a widely read person and brings with him a rich blend of work, business, management, and leadership experience of close to 4 decades. He's a nationally acclaimed author, coach, master storyteller, keynote speaker, an organizational turnaround expert, and nation builder. He has been writing on human behavior, business success, and many other related topics for over 2 decades now. He has 10 books published to his credit and in several languages. And he has authored 1,000 plus articles on self-development, spirituality, and varied topics. One of his books, The Spiritual CEO, is based on his understanding of Indian mythology, corporate life cycles, and how it connects to the leadership and organizational shifts that are globally happening. He is an avid reader, has been practicing heartful meditation since 1992, and is a heartfulness trainer. Thanks to the various roles he plays in his corporate life and the Heartfulness Institute, he has great exposure in interfacing with humans from across the world. Brother Prakash is an excellent vocalist. A video showcasing his melodious singing skills was shared on the Malaysian chat group yesterday. We hope to hear Brother Prakash belt out one of his tunes later in the program. Another notable effort by Brother Prakash was his production of a series of videos called Glorious India, which was made for PM Narendra Modi. In a nutshell, these videos give Brother Prakash's perspective on how India, or any other country for that matter, can establish itself as a successful nation in material and spiritual terms. Brother Prakash was previously beloved Chariji's personal secretary, and he now continues as secretary to Daji. Brother Prakash, your chosen topic, Meanderings of a Focused Soul, stirs lots of curiosity. One doesn't expect to find the words meanderings and focus in the same sentence. So brother, kindly enlighten us. The global virtual audience is now yours. Please, brother.
Namaste, dear sisters and brothers. Once a very famous speaker was called to talk in an audience, an elite audience like you. And when he came up, he asked the person who had arranged the show, how long can I speak? So the person who arranged the show said, sir, you can speak as long as you want, but we will leave in half an hour's time. So the question to Brother Shivkumar and Ramesh is, how long can he speak? Okay, there's another famous joke about another speaker. He took the stage and he kept talking and talking and talking. And he was so enamored by his own voice, he didn't know how long he had spoken. And somebody from the front row kept showing the watch to him. He didn't seem to get the clue. And after he finished the talk, he came down and said, I'm very sorry, I forgot my watch at home. The person said, at least you could have turned around, there was a calendar behind you. So don't worry, I'm a public speaker and normally my sessions are well guided and I get a sense of what the audience feels. To a great extent, we'll meander, but yet stay within a focus. I recall the visit I had made to Malaysia in 2007 along with my family on a holiday. But no holidays are ever completely a holiday for an Abhyasi, specifically the one who is reasonably known, not because of his own credits, but because of the house he used to stay. When you stay with the king, everyone gets to notice you. So I have stayed with one king for about 28 years and I've been staying with another for quite some time now. So we were hosted in several places when I traveled there. Morning used to be sightseeing and evening used to be visits to Abhyasi places, meetings, talks, things like that. What I fondly recall is somebody took us in those days, I think it was in Kuala Lumpur, and they showed us a place where it was the then center during Babaji's time. And apparently, I think that house is gone now. That's what I was told. But it was very nostalgic. I took photographs. When I came back, I showed it to Charji Maharaj. Then he said, yes, this is the place. And he said, I've been there with Babaji Maharaj and things like that. So it's always nostalgic to speak to people whom you connect well. Specifically, Sister Sushila from Malaysia, her family. Many Abhyasis have been known to me personally for a very, very long time. I mean, officially, I was a gatekeeper for several years in the Manapakam cottage. So whether they like me or not, they had to be friendly with me. Not that I was very aggressive with them, but it was fun. That actually also shaped my thinking because when you meet people from multiple cultural backgrounds, specifically during Charity's time, thanks to Sajmar Spirituality Foundation and all that, the mission was present in more than 100 countries then itself. And we used to get batches of people from several countries. So that gave me exposure to a lot of cultural background, nationalities. See, people at heart are almost the same, but how they think, how they behave, their food habits, their thinking habits, all that helped me to shape a lot internally. And it was not just a superficial relationship. Many of them used to go back. Those days, they used to email. Subsequently, thanks to WhatsApp and social media growing fast, many of them stay in touch almost on a very regular basis. Some of them even once a week. Hence, speaking to people who are your brothers and sisters whom you have met at some point of time, interacted, does give you a feeling of deja vu, in some way. You have been there, you have met them, kind of stuff. If you look at the word, see, a brother was asking a question, how am I going to connect the topic of meanderings of a focused soul? Brother Shivkumar was asking. Actually speaking, As he mentioned that I'm a prolific writer also. My 11th book recently came out, which was published by Amazon. It was not just published by Amazon, they had bought over the worldwide rights. Normally you print through a publisher and then you host in Amazon for you to sell the book. Whereas in my case, the spiritual CEO, the worldwide rights was bought and published, and the icing on the cake was it has a forward by Daji himself. I already have about 7 books in the pipeline, which I finished in various stages. Not a given shape finally, because till a publisher comes through and shows interest, there is no point. Earlier, I used to complete a book and then wait for publishers to come and approach. These days, I just write the sort of the framework and skeleton paragraphs here and there. I have the beginning to end in mind, but I don't completely write. So somewhere in 2012, in fact, even today, the word file that I've saved shows the first save was somewhere in 2012. And that was the name that I chose for this topic, actually. Though I'm not borrowing anything from the book, the title, what I gave to that book then, which is yet to see the light of the day, Meanderings of a Focused Soul. When I shared that topic with Chari Maharaj, he had a hearty laugh. I mean, he is in a different league. I mean, the number of books he has read, the kind of fervor with which he dives deep into each subject. I remember first time I wanted to gift him something. And I had finished reading a book. In my view, that was a very, very powerful book those days, in 93 or 94. And then I bought that book and went and, with all, like a child carrying a toffee to its parent, I went to Gayatri. The book name I remember was The Dancing Uli Masters, Fidjof Capra, if I'm not mistaken. And that book was one of the simplest books that you can lay your hand to understand Newtonian physics, quantum physics, theory of relativity, and things like that. It was so beautifully written. I was excited. I bought him a copy, rushed to Gayatri. He just came out and he was super fast in assessing what is running in your head. Of course, our conversations were all in Tamil because we speak the same language, mother tongue wise. So what happened is, he immediately asked, what is up? In the sense he knew, and I had kept it in my hand, sort of, it was gift wrap. I gave it to him, he opened. I started talking about the book. He just waved his hand and took me inside his room and opened his library, and there was this book which he had read more than 1 year back. And he started quoting from the book and saying, this what is in the book, this what. But he said, anyway, keep it up. This is a good habit. I remember. So when I shared the name of the book of Meanderings of a Focused Soul, he had a hearty laugh. He didn't say anything. To really look at the etymology of the word meandering, if all of us understand the English language does not have too many original words. I'm told that roughly about 800 to 1,000 words are original. And they were very adaptable language. So what they did is they used to borrow left, right, and center. And today you have lakhs and lakhs of words in English. All are brought in from so many other dialects and languages like Latin, Greek, French, German, even from Sanskrit, Tamil, things like that. If you look at the word meandering, etymology, as they say, study of the root of the words in English, there are 2 words in which they have borrowed this from. One is a Latin word called meander, and the second is a Greek word called meandros. In Greek, there is also a river called Meanderings, which is the name of the river. And deliberately, if you look at my backdrop, I have chosen something which meanders at the backdrop as a river. There's a specific reason why I chose that, so it will be easy for you to get a grip of what the topic is. The river apparently seems to meander for those who don't look at it. If you look at that backdrop, what you're seeing, you'll find that the river is heading nowhere. It seems to stop, it seems to pause. There are small ponds and lakes which are formed here and there. Yet, if you take a helicopter view and go up and up and up, from the time it literally forms as droplets on the top of a mountain, takes the form of a river. Apparently, rivers seem to have their own thinking, their own intelligence. It's said, when Chariji once confirmed that even rivers have their own intelligence. They know how to find their way to the Mother Ocean, where they want to go back and then join the source from which it all came. So if you really look at it, apparent river which meanders is very, very, very focused on the goal that it wants. It seems to meander for a simple reason. It is taking a path which is easy for it to not destroy much. Let's take the flight paths. We all know that if you give a map to a child and say that you want to, say, fly from Chennai to San Francisco, they'll draw a straight line in the map. But in reality, it's never so. Flights have to typically go closer to the pole and then fly back. If you search the net, you'll find the reason that, in fact, that sometimes is the faster path than going via a straight path, which might have several turbulence. And as we all know, Earth is not a straight line. Though a map might look to be a straight line, the Earth is a continuous curve. It's a continuous circle. So the way it has to move has to be focused on the goal, not what happens to be a straight way. So when you use the word something like a meanderings of a focused soul, don't we all meander in our life? How many of us, having known the goal at some point of time, we entered heartfulness, have given up everything else to stay focused on the goal and to go only towards the goal? We spend maybe an hour, 2 hours on our personal practice. And if you are more committed and you become a volunteer, you take up more work. In my case, I almost invest 10 to 12 hours a day average for the last 28 years or so in mission work, one way or another. Doesn't it mean in some way that actually we are not completely focused on the goal? Aren't we meandering? Even if you take the so-called movement between points from the time you start your yatra, go to point 13, the heart region itself is not a straight line. Why not start from point 1 and straight away show a direct line and move on to the mind region, point 6, 7, and then on? And why not cut through the skull and go to 13th? Why does it have to flow up and go back? After all, they are all supposed to be imaginary points. In which case, it should be possible for them to take us straight. The meanderings are essential for one simple reason. I was recently reading a literature 2 days back of Babaji Maharaj, where he says, for you to cover something like a heart region without a capable master, you can spend millions of lives and yet not master the heart region. For you to graduate from heart region, move to higher regions. And after that, each of the regions that you cross has the same tendency. Unless you expand, unless you in some way circumambulate the point or expand into the point, meander in some way. Meander normally is seen as a waste of effort in normal language. But meandering has a very powerful purpose. For a nomad, whom we call as a nomad, he may be extremely clear about what he is up to. We may be thinking he's a nomad, he's just going in circles. Whereas many of us have been going in circles till we have maybe found a path like heartfulness, taking life after life for millennia. It is said that there are 84 lakh species we cross before taking the janma of a human being. And it is said that except a few souls, all souls have to go through this 84 lakh species, right from the lowest level of an amoeba to the one which has one brain, apparently like trees and plants, to the two brain, to the third brain, to the fourth. And humans, like people who are vested with six senses. Even that in some way looks to be a meandering. Haven't we meandered for millions and millions of lives before coming to the form of what we are today? And even here, are we so focused we know what we are supposed to head into? When I ask this question, it doesn't mean I have all the answers. We are all co-travelers. We are all learning together. Hence, when you look at a topic like meanderings of a focused, focus is always about a goal or an objective. When you are obsessed with a goal, or rather I would say, the goal should become you, where you become sort of you and goal, there is no difference, at least at a thinking level, at a feeling level. When you do that, it is a very old saying that what you focus expands. If you take a pen and keep it at a distance of 5 feet, you will not be able to read the engraving on the pen. But if you start bringing it closer and closer and closer to your eyes, when it becomes so-called myopic view, very close to your eyes, you can read the letters which are engraved so easily. But you'll also find something surprising. When something is brought to your attention so close, at that moment, you will not be able to see anything else. So when you say a meandering of a focused soul, why a soul? Because the goal is not for the body, the goal is not for the mind, or the goal is not for anything else but for the soul. Soul has incarnated to find our body, any body, to find its way back. Makes a mistake, like the story of Vikram and Betal, comes back, comes back, comes back, comes back. And sometimes these meanderings are essential for us to know, like in Sanskrit, eneti, 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 not this, not this, not this, not this. If today, thanks to our masters, if you know how to reach the goal, imagine how many thousands and thousands of saints and rishis have invested their lifetime to find what is not the goal, to find what is not the path, to find what is not the way. And then they have given you a well-chiseled, beautiful, clear-cut path. And hence, the so-called meanderings we do, even Lalaji Maharaj has said, to say that you don't need knowledge, in the first place, you should have mastered knowledge. When a poor man on the street says that money is of no use, nobody would listen to him. But at the same place, a person who is rich, who comes and says money is useless, people will listen. See, there's always normally the norm of human being that those who have mastered the art of any craft for that matter, whether it's reaching the highest goal or mastery in a specific art or craft, you need to be there before people really start listening to you. And that's what our masters do all the time. So sometimes meanderings, as sometimes it's also beautifully called as sweet nothings. We all know many of the things that we do in our life are full of sweet nothings. It's very nice when you do it. But having done it, when you think back, you may be wondering, was it worth my time? Should I have gone in? Or should I remain focused? Once the question came up about movies, etc., in the presence of Daji was there, Chariji was there. Somebody asked the question to Chariji Maharaj, why not make maybe movies on great saints? It will be worthwhile instead of all the commercial movies that are coming around. He gave a beautiful explanation at the time. He said, imagine a movie is made on Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. What is it they can show? 2.5 hours, they have to show him sitting and meditating. Who will watch that movie? So sometimes those meanderings are essential for us to get a grip of life. Many times, after all, the experience that we have in life is all about knowing what we should not be doing. In fact, in my leadership sessions in time management, this is one point I communicate to many leaders. More than knowing what you should be doing, you should be knowing what you should not be doing. Likewise, sometimes meanderings help us to know what we should not be doing. It doesn't mean you keep doing that all the time, but at least you sort of find a meaning into that and then start going around. Even if you look at science, I don't know how many of you are aware, the nature of the mind makes sense with more disconnected things than connected things. When I say that upfront, you may not even immediately relate, at least not all of you. But you have spent some time studying mathematics in your school, and if you're fascinated by that subject, there is a beautiful series called as Fibonacci series. It's spelled as Fibonacci, but pronounced as Fibonacci series. Surprisingly, this series was invented by a person in the 12th century AD when he was studying the growth of rabbits, how a rabbit in the first generation becomes, how many do they populate in the second and the third and the fourth. And based on certain idealized assumptions, he reached at the Fibonacci series. Fibonacci series, for those who know mathematics, you would know it's the sequence which adds to the earlier number to arrive at the next number. For example, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. It goes like that. 1 gets added to 1, and then 1 and 1 becomes 2, 1 and 2 gets added, becomes 3. It goes like that. And surprisingly, they found out that there is a pattern in apparent lack of pattern, even in life. Everything which looks just disjointed, when you go up and look at it in a different way, they all seem to present a different picture. And then when I spoke, or rather picked up this topic to speak, I wanted to apparently meander between topics. But when you sit back, relax at a later point of time, even when you're hearing it or listening to it, if it doesn't make sense, maybe you go back and listen to it again. You'll find that the dots would apparently seem to match somewhere. After all, many of the star constellation, by themselves, you will know nothing. I remember one of the days Charji was standing in the entrance to the cottage, one of those still nights, completely clean sky, and you're looking at the stars, and you're showing us constellation after constellation. And those are the days when mobiles were not yet that famous. Some of the apps which can show you the star formations. And with a simple swipe of the stick, he could make us understand which constellation was what. And apparently, the disjointed stars that we are seeing in the sky, they all seem to form a beautiful shape, which our forefathers have seen with naked eyes. And then they have said, this is this constellation, that is this, the series of zodiac constellations, if you see, all of them are all there. Such a beautiful, fascinating subject, the astronomy. Likewise, some of the insights I'm going to give you might apparently look to be those disjointed stars in the sky. But of course, with a little bit of imagination, you can join anything. And with a little bit of lack of imagination, even joined things will look to be disjointed to us. Let me share a very interesting anecdote or a story. There was once this man long ago who wanted to get a shirt stitched for himself. And he went into a shop which was famous for stitching shirts for men. I'm talking about 40, 50 years ago or something like that. When ready-made shirts were still not in common. He gave all the measurements. So the tailor said, come after a week and pick up your shirt. So the person went after a week. And what he found was the most amazing stitched shirt that you could ever imagine. And he happily took it. And he asked the tailor, can I just check it before I leave? He said, of course, please do. So the person picks up the shirt, wears it. But suddenly something strange happens. Everything is perfect with the shirt, but there is one challenge. that one length of an arm is slightly shorter than the other length. The right hand is slightly shorter in length than the left hand. We tell the tailor, you have done such a beautiful work, but see what has happened. So the tailor says, I don't mind altering this and giving you, but what will happen is the stitches that you originally made will have to be removed. I'll have to stitch it again, which means the beauty which I was able to bring, that craftsmanship might be lost. Instead, I'll give you an option. So the person says, what? It's such a beautiful shirt. When you wear, everybody will literally stand and ask you. Just do one thing, pull your right hand a little bit inside and adjust and wear the shirt. After a lot of struggle and with the help of the tailor, he is able to do that. And he looks at the mirror, he's sort of satisfied, though there is sort of a crookedness to his right hand. But otherwise, it looks to be an amazing fit. But there is still one more problem. Because he has pulled his right hand, there is a sag at the back of the right shoulder, which becomes now noticeable. So he says, boss, this is what has happened, but you see there is a sag. He says, even there, I have a solution. Don't worry, just stretch your shoulder a little bit backward and it looks perfect. And this person does, and it looks to be perfect. And he's so happy, he wants to show to the world. He walks around in the street, but he walks with a crooked hand and a crooked back. Make an imagination and see. As he's walking, one person stops saying, what a lovely shirt. And yeah, it's a beautiful shirt. So immediately the person says, more than you, I am amazed at the tailor. He said, why? See, you are such a crooked looking person. The tailor is such an amazing person. It's just a shirt for you. When I say this, it might have brought a laughter in your face, but in one way, this is the plight of people who follow religious system and to some extent many of the spiritual systems as well. In common parlance, the shirt that the tailor stitched, which was different from what he needed, is what we call as rituals. Now, if you go back and if you have found any, if you have followed any religious practices or even a practice like heartfulness or any spiritual practice, everything in one way actually is a ritual. A ritual is nothing but a set pattern of practices, like the shirt that the tailor stitched, but it may not fit you. But what happens is, we all go for the one size fits all. I'm not taking pot shots at anyone, but when you are in a practice like heartfulness, doesn't mean that some of the basics might work, like the buttons will go inside the buttonhole for sure. But not everything else will have to be exactly the same for you as it is to somebody else. Surprisingly, when Babaji Maharaj was experimenting with Sahaj Marg in his early times, this even was recently covered in Daji's talk. He finds a way to reach the 13th point in a different route other than what we all know. He was very surprised with his discovery. And then he shares with Lalaji Maharaj in intercommunication that this is what I found. What do I do? This is there in some of the literature for those who have read, but I don't want to dive deeper into that. And Lalaji Maharaj tells him, it's for you to decide. And then Babaji Maharaj decides, based on comparative study and all that, that the path that Lalaji Maharaj has shown him is the right way to go. The same is what happens to many of us. When we follow something ritualistically, I gave a talk about 6 months back on the impact of rituals. It's there in my YouTube channel as well. Ritual is a set of discipline that we have to follow. Many people write mails to Daji saying, should I do the night 1 to 3 a.m. meditation or not to imbibe these qualities? You have mentioned about meditating in the afternoon or 12 o'clock, which is also the third sandhya, as they say, with the balance. You also spoken about spot cleaning. You also spoken about, you also spoken. If you actually collectively add up all the techniques that our masters are given, including practicing the 4 suggestions or one of the 4 suggestions every hour. I did a quick math when we ran the first 100-day challenge in Chennai about 6 years ago, which became literally a trendsetter those days, which today is literally being followed in almost all the countries, centers and all that. The 90-day challenge, when you added up all the practice elements, can you make a quick guess how long it would take for you to practice everything that a master has prescribed? About 7 hours. Imagine investing 7 hours a day just for your personal practice. From the time you get up, just do a quick math. You'll be amazed to find that this mathematics was actually made and given to me by an atheist. Right up to half an hour of literature, half an hour of cleaning, spot cleaning, every hour of practice, and beyond all this to be in continuous constant remembrance of meditative state. And then he said, brother, it looks like you have nothing else to do in life from the time I get up and go to sleep in the night. I spend about 7 hours. I won't even have time for my work, leave alone for my family. So we can't follow everything ritualistically. There's once this famous incident that Chariji Maharaj shared of Babaji's visit to a town of Chennai, way back in 60s or 70s. And this person, I happened to meet their children later, though he had passed on. This person was absolute close to zero in practice. I mean, he had no element of practice of Sahajmath those days, which he was doing. But the day Babaji met him, apparently Chariji saw him Babaji taking this person and putting him in central region. Literally, I mean, in a couple of days of stay there. And Chariji just asked him, what are you doing? Can he take it? You are the master, of course, you can. I'm not exactly quoting, I'm paraphrasing. He said, you are the master, you can take him, but don't you feel for a person who's not even practicing for you to take him right into central region? So, Patsardi, look at his heart. The love he has for me is unparalleled. So, is it rituals which is going to take you to the goal? Or the rituals are tools in your hand for you to go faster to the goal? So the 90-day challenge that you have is not the begin or end of all. Finally, as they say, the day you are able to knock on the master's heart opens and you get into his mental womb, the job is done. After which you are delivering to the bright world, or your birth of spiritual entity is guaranteed. So if you look at the tailor's shirt story, many of us rituals are also called as idiosyncrasies, the equivalent word. We all have our own idiosyncrasies. Some are good. For example, automation, automatism, sitting in the same place. But would that alone make a big difference? Daji cautioned once that any practice of no consequence, the maximum impact you have in any of these practices is only about 5%. Can you imagine? Like a stone which gets, grinding stone, you keep on at it every day morning, wake up and do your point B cleaning, do the prayer, sit for meditation for an hour, complete it before sunrise. Again, sit at 7 o'clock when master gives the direct sitting, practice all the suggestions that he gives, do the spot cleaning, do the evening cleaning, do the 9 p.m. prayer, do the point A meditation between 9 o'clock prayer and bedtime prayer, read mission literature, do the bedtime prayer, do the 10th maxim, do the bedtime prayer, go to bed, again do. And what is the impact? 5%. Even in economics, there's a famous principle called the Pareto principle, 80-20. 20% of what you do brings 80% of your result, and 80% of what you do gives only 20% of the results. Likewise, anything done ritualistically just because you are being told to do. Why am I saying this specifically in a session like 90 days? It's better that I break the mold before you get into a rut. Not that 90 days by itself is bad. I mean, Brother Ramesh shouldn't mistake me for saying that. After all, I remember starting this trend in Chennai Metro Zone with the first 100-day practice in 2016. But the challenge is when you forget the purpose and get stuck to the ritual. Charity's famous talk where he spoke about how rituals get transferred from generation to generation. He speaks about a fat father who used to do rituals for his deceased father. And he used to wear the traditional panchakacham, like the South Indian Brahmins wear. And he was, since he was very fat, when he used to do this tarpanam or whatever, whenever he used to tarpanam, he has to bend. When he bends, the backside of the dhoti will give up. And he used to pull it in. And his son used to see this from the age of 1, his father doing this. And he used to become a puny, thin, lanky fellow. And when his father passed on, he started doing the rituals. But every time the Kurukal or whoever the Purohit did it, he used to stop and ask his wife to pull the dhoti from behind and insert it again. Because it won't fall. He forgot that his father was fat and hence the dhoti was not standing in his hip, it was falling. But he thought that was the most important stuff. And he was wondering, I'm doing something wrong. He used to give that work, and when somebody came and said, who knew both his father and me, that is the reason he has stopped doing this. We had to be clear of the goal. When we are clear of the goal, where attitude 95% matters. Between 2011, from the time on 3rd October, he was made announced as the successor, till the time of the passing on of the great man on 20th December 2014. He has given umpteen talks in Manapakam stage and the Dom Ye. Many of you might have also attended. Those days, literally every alternate talk will be about attitude. Even today he speaks. But those days, the amount of talks he has given on attitude, he used to say that get your attitude right. And a famous story he used to quote was about Vidura from Mahabharata. The story of how Pandu was born, how Dhritarashtra was born. Dhritarashtra was born as a blind because when Vyasa came to impregnate the 2 daughter-in-laws, one of them was so scared she closed her eyes. She didn't want to see it. And the boy which was born blind. The second one froze, though she kept her eyes open. So it was born as Pandu with leukemia. The third one, they played a trick and put him onto a servant maid. And the servant maid felt so gifted that such a great saint is coming to impregnate him. And the son was born as Vidura, the complete man. He was considered to be the best archer. Had he fought the war, it is said that he could have destroyed the opposition army in one day. And hence he chose not to fight. He was kept neutral by Lord Krishna. He was such a great warrior and such a great prime minister, such a knowledgeable person. All that because of his mother's attitude at the time of being impregnated. Every time you are taking a sitting, every time you are in meditative mood, every time you attend a satsang, you are allowing the purity of the highest standard to flow through you. When the purity of the highest standard flows through you, it is like molten liquid being poured into a mold, which helps you to make a statue. If the mold is of a wrong shape or disfigured mold or whatever it may be, or it is that of a Rakshas, a bad element, what would happen to the mold? It will take the same shape. Our attitude is the mold with which we decide what flows in. Even in the last week's talk that Ajay was mentioning, you all think you are meditating, you are all great people. And then he spoke about Bhavji Maharaj's condemnation indirectly, where he said, where religion stops, spirituality begins. Where spirituality stops, reality begins. Where reality stops, bliss begins. And then there are multiple dimensions. People have already crossed the state of meditation, spirituality, and moved on to reality or bliss. When they be laughing at us. So in some way, the attitude with which we approach what appears to be a ritual. And when would the right attitude blossom? When we understand the depth of what is being shared with us. I have been going through literature several times in my life, all the works, as and when I get time. And I have been privy to almost all conversations of Chariji Maharaj and Raji while they were in Chennai, or I have also traveled with them extensively in India, at least. Each one of them has only given newer and newer and newer dimensions of what simple process heartfulness offers. Once famously at Manapakam, we were all sitting and talking, and somebody asked Chariji, seriously, but yet in a way in which it was sort of poking. He asked, why are you giving so many talks? What is the point? You are talking and talking and talking. And then he didn't get worked up or whatever. Sometimes he can get annoyed. But in this case, I think he saw the plight of the person who was asking. He said, Sajmar is all about only 3 letters. In short, he said, I even gave a talk on this about 8 months back. It's all about MCP, meditate, clean, pray. That's all. Nothing else. But how many of you understand what is meditation? How many understand what is cleaning? How many of you understand why you have to clean? And then he asked a few were present. And everyone came with their own, and each one was in the system for 5, 10, 15 years. Everyone came with their own interpretation of what meditation is, what. And Chariji said, you know, if there are 100 abhyasis, we'll have 110 definition of what Sajman is. Even after so many years, I don't think we yet understand. We may understand what is meditation. But if I give you a sheet of paper and ask you to write, why do you meditate? Why do you clean? Why do you pray? It is like the work I do with leaders in big organizations. When I go there, one of the things that comes up is the CEO or the chairman comes and says, I have a big vision for this company. In some way to puncture his ego or to show them that people don't understand what he communicates, we give them a sheet of paper and ask them to write in 1 line or a few lines what the vision of the company is. And if there are 10 people who are present, there will be 10 different versions of what the vision is, and it will be a shock to the chairman or the CEO of the company. Likewise, how many of us really know why we meditate? You may have different reasons. Somebody else may have different reasons. Somebody else might have a different reason altogether. The same way for cleaning, the same. How many of us really believe the way in which cleaning is done? After all, there are only 2 purposes when it comes to cleaning, purpose-wise. One is to remove the complexities and make you simple. The other is to remove the impurities and make you pure. Because God is simple and pure, that's all. But you ask any abhyasi, any heartfulness practitioner to explain what cleaning is, you will find dozens and dozens of variants. In fact, Daji got so worked up once. He said, ask all of them to stop talking, ask them to play the standard videos that I'm giving. Because he listened to a few videos, he found that each one had his or her own interpretation. So coming back to that one single story which has set off the attitude paradox. Everyone thinks they have the right attitude and no harm in it. But do we have not just the right attitude, but do we have the exact attitude, what it takes us to go towards our goal? Which also brings us to the other element, which I mentioned in the talk itself, meanderings of a focused soul. Focused on what? Focused on the goal. How many of us really have the goal as defined in the maxim? I don't know. I'm not finding fault, but I'm curious. If you had time, I would have done a chat box game and asked all of you to post there. But to avoid much of embarrassment, I'll say that normally it's not easy that we find the same explanations in all the places. If you really look at this one simple story, it's about we all fit some way into what is given to us without even knowing why we are fitting into that. As Babaji had told Chariji once, and Chariji told us several times, Daji has told us several times, till you take up the system, ask thousands of questions so that you know why you are here. But if you don't know why you are here, you are joining just because somebody told you, you have started a 90-day practice because somebody told you, you are meditating because somebody told you. For some time it's okay, but otherwise then you will be walking on the road like the person who walked with that shirt which didn't fit and had a skew to his back, a crooked back and a crooked hand. Let me go to another short anecdote from the life of a person called Vishweshwaraya. He was considered to be one of the greatest architects in the pre-independence days, respected and revered even by the Britishers. He was so famous that it was his design which became the biggest dam in Karnataka, the Brindavan Gardens that many of you might have visited. Even today, it's a majestic structure. This person was considered to be of the highest integrity and character, to such an extent that he won't sway even when people are not watching you. Charity's famous quote when it comes to character formation, he used to say, character is what you do in the dark. When you know for certainty nobody is watching you, what do you speak? How do you eat? How do you sit? How do you behave? When nobody is watching, when you are certain. He said, this is what you are. In a world where we are all continuously being monitored, we all at least theoretically know how to behave to get a good name. In terms of right from dress, in terms of the basic etiquettes, things like that. But are we the same godly person that we all project, the saintly person we all project when the lights are off? It's a question for us to think. But when you look at the story of Vishweshwaraya, he used to travel extensively on behalf of government work. And once it was said, documented story about him, such impeccable integrity and character. Once he was staying in a big guest house, and he had gone there as part of the government work. Up to 11 o'clock in the night, he was looking at the files, work, which are meant for the government. And he had one light in his bedroom on, and he was working. And at 11 o'clock, he had finished the work. He wanted to now read something which he liked. So instead of calling the servant who was available for him, he went out from his bag, which was kept outside. He picked up a candle and a light, and he brought it to his room. And he put the candle light on and switched off the electrical lights. So the servant came and asked, sir, you could have asked me, I would have brought this for you. And second, why are not you using the light? He said, till 11 o'clock, I was doing government work. I had every right to use the government light I was using. When I stopped doing government work, you are no more the servant. You are another human being. So this work, I can't give it to you now. Those days they were called as tawali or whatever, orderlies. He says, I am reading a book which is for myself. So how can you use the government light for that? And he lights up a candle and reads. And then the story goes like that. His life was full of life. If you look at many of our masters, the kind of wealth that the mission has, these days at least, they can do anything that they want. Yet if you really, having observed them closely, one thing I have known for sure, highest integrity, highest character formation. Our masters, the biggest role models for each and every one of us. In all corporate life, we all speak about walking the talk. Do people walk the talk? When it comes to life, we are all like children who ape our parents. We don't do what our masters tell us to do. We do what they do. We all ape their behavior. We don't ape their insight. We really don't know what it is. So what we do normally is we tend to ape them. We act like masters. And hence they have to be so careful. Every word that they utter, every action that they do, people immediately start mimicking and copying, saying, oh, my master has done, it's all right for me to do either. Also, one single word, Lalaji repeats, after all, in all the books that after all, there's only one official book of his. He says, Between spirituality and morality, I'll put morality on a higher pedal than spirituality. I was there in 1995, somewhere in August or so, when Chariji was visiting Bangalore. He had gone to the farm of his son, Brother P.R. Krishna, to inaugurate the farm. There was a rose garden that Brother P.R. Krishna had at the time. We were traveling with him, and he wanted to give us all a sitting, inauguration sitting. And he sat on the floor, gave a sitting, though there was a chair. And after the sitting, he said, I feel like talking, and somebody put a mic. Those days there were no videos, there were only somebody will carry an audio recorder, it will be recorded, and it will be later transcribed and sold as CDs and things like that. So he gave a very beautiful talk. He said a few things related to character formation. He said the form that you have taken, you owe it to your parents. It comes from their DNA, the chromosomes, whatever you want to call it. There's not much that you can do. Though you can alter here and there, plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery, you can't make complete structural changes. So the education and material success that you have, you can't take credit. They are the samskaras that have come with you from the prior lives and the samskaras you are partly building in this life. He said, spiritual progress is an absolute no-no. It is completely given by the master. The only thing you are capable of doing is to become deserving. But that deservingness can be created only by character formation, which alone is in your hands. And hence, the only thing that a practitioner, heartfulness practitioner has in his or her hands is to shape such a character. Many people ask, in various times, people ask me several questions. What exactly is what you call as character formation? I'll take one short story, maybe end with that and move on to question and answer. Though I have several other points to cover, it's already close to an hour. It's about two painters who came to a king who said that we are great painters and we want to enter into a competition. In fact, the king says, I want to see who is the better painter of you. And I throw open challenge. Whoever wins, you ask, what do you ask? It's yours. You name a price, it will be yours. And both the artists, painters, they ask for about 6 months' time. And they are given a room, and in the middle of the room, they're given two sides of the wall. In the middle of the room, they put a huge sort of coverage. They pull a wheel around it, like a huge curtain. And they're given about 6 months' time. The king doesn't really bother to disturb them. And periodically, he'll check how things are going. They'll say it's all fine. The first painter had a lot of assistants and he was apparently doing a great work. The second painter kept absolutely silent. He didn't show what he was doing at all. And at the end of 6 months, the king came and he said, I want to see the work. So the second painter says, please see the first painter's work first. I'll show mine next, because mine is something that you cannot even imagine. The story was shared by Chariji Maharaj once. And the king looks at the paint, and it's the most amazing painting that I've ever seen in this life. That kind of beauty, the strokes, that splendor, that sprinkling of color, the life, the art form is just unimaginable. He was about to announce the winner, but he says it's only fair that you look at the work of the other person. And then the other person is asked to bring the curtains down. And he pulls the curtains. All that the king finds is a complete reflection of what was on the other side of the wall. The king gets angry. He says, you are a cheat. You have done nothing. He said, king, please hold your words. Listen to what I have to say. He says, I've taken 6 months to convert this wall, not with a real mirror, but I put my heart and soul to convert this wall like a mirror. It is capable of exactly duplicating, reflecting what is in front of it. And then the king understands that finally life is all about what it is. If you really have to take a clue from this, which Chariji Maharaj did share in that story, but it's my reflection. The highest level of character formation is when you become the exact reflection of that mirror, and the only thing that you reflect is the master in you. The day we are able to do that, and if you really ask me how to do that, that can only happen in one state as I see it. When your heart is a perfect vacuum. When it's a perfect vacuum, it tends to pull everything that is around. And in remembrance, when you are in vacuum, you pull nothing else but the master himself to you. And that kind of vacuum can only happen through sustained practice. And when you're clear of the goal, when you're clear of the tools that are available, and which is the tool I have to use? How do I use it? How long do I use it? Is this tool something that I need to use? For me, maybe reading literature will kindle an interest in me to do cleaning better. For you, learning to a video or an audio of master might be helpful for you to do the cleaning better. For somebody else, it could be intuitive. For somebody else, it could be talking to a preceptor. For somebody else, it could be talking to an abhyasi. So there is no one single method, though the techniques are apparently the same. Meditate, clean and pray, MCB. But the way you adapt is a choice in terms of what your goal is. Are you possessed with the goal? Has the goal possessed you where there's no difference between you and the goal in terms of thinking? Even if you're woken up in the middle of the night and asked, what's your goal? Can you, other than by-hearting and reproducing, can you say from the bottom of the heart what your goal is? When you're able to do, and when you modify your attitude and modify the practice, after all, you may be asking, do you have the right to modify the practice? After all, aren't we doing that all the time? One day we clean, one day we don't clean. If you're not modification, what are we doing? The current form of cleaning was, after all, completely formulated by Babaji Maharaj, though there was an element of cleaning in the time of Lalaji Maharaj. It was completely made, researched and made by Babaji Maharaj. If you look at the revelations of points C, D, etc., it's a revelation to Daji, which is confirmed in whispers way back, even before he was made as a successor or announced as a successor. All that comes when you have a little of flexibility based on the goal. Be ready to experiment in a positive way. Be aligned to the goal. Meander here and there, no issues. As long as your meandering doesn't take you away from the goal. But it is a positive curvature where it is said that when you want to aim, like when you're running for a pole vault, if your height is 6 meters, if you aim at 6 meters, you'll hit the pole and fall down. You may have to aim at 6.2 or 6.3. Then only you can go over. A meandering or a positive curvature is something like that. I wish you the very best in moving towards your goal at God's speed. Keep meandering as long as your attitude and the adaptation of practice is to its best. Thank you. Now over for questions.
Thank you, Brother Ramesh. Brother Prakash, I must say you have touched on many profound points, some of them very revealing. Your emphasis on character formation is a timely reminder to all of us. I can personally relate to the concept of neti, or not this, requires a lot of courage and willpower. Thank you again, Brother Prakash. We'd like to take a short break before we move on to the second part of this program, which will be the Q&A session. Are you ready to take on the first question?
Absolutely.
First question, brother. What are some of the obstacles or pitfalls that we may commonly face on our spiritual path? From your experiences, can you share some of those that you have personally encountered? And how did you overcome these obstacles?
It would be a folly for me to say that I overcome all the obstacles. It's still an ongoing process, work in progress. Bread is still being cooked, or I would say, put in the oven, still in the process. But each one of us have our own ways in which we stumble. all of us write our own thesis manuals on how we can stumble towards the goal. Very rarely can anyone say that they have not fallen on the way, not fallen in the sense of falling down, but going through some kind of a stumbling block or another. The biggest stumbling block I have personally encountered a lot, now I'm encountering lesser, hopefully, is what I would call as my own assessment of my intelligence. We all have, in various degrees, I know it all. Even a 3-year-old child, when you say, don't do this, you say, I know mama, I know papa, I know. Somehow humans have this tendency, and I don't want to generalize, but for me it has been the biggest. Once there was a huge kind of a mental slap I got when we were all sitting in the beach. And Chariji started talking to a question that an Abhyasi asked. I sort of preempted 1 or 2 lines in my own exuberance, thinking that I'll give a cue to the master. And once he kept quiet, second he quiet, third he literally chewed my head off in front of about 100 people. So now tell me, what is the 5th line I'm going to tell you? Now tell me, what is the 8th line I'm going to tell you? I mean, in a very loving way. I mean, not that. Later he told me, when he had come back to Gayatri, said, leave alone when a master speaks. He didn't call himself a master. He said, leave alone when an elder speaks. When somebody speaks, just shut your intelligence and listen to them. They may have a different point of view. This is one thing I have seen with some great personalities outside the mission whom I have come across. And this is what maybe Daji mentioned this morning about humility in his talk. Intelligence is a very big challenge we all have, specifically when we are in material life, in corporate life. And the only yardstick that you see is the material success you have, the power that you wield, the authority that you hold. You think you are successful, and because you are successful, you think you have a right to talk on anything. You have a view. In fact, the world has a POV, a point of view of everything. I used to have a lot. These days, I have not consciously reduced, but I have to a great extent understood the folly of thinking that I know. Here and there, the dark man wakes up, does show his face, but I am quick to recollect who I am and who I am not. So that is one pitfall that I have learned from my personal experiences. Like they famously say, you're given 2 ears and 1 mouth so that you can shut up and listen more. So if we can, every situation is capable of teaching us something. Something in terms of what we should not do. Sometimes you may be wondering, this person, what he's saying is so irrelevant. But when you look back, you will find, once Sharaji famously said, there are no coincidences in life, in this universe. Nothing is a coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. As repeatedly it comes in this personal reason, whatever, however you pronounce French word. There is some purpose for which you are exposed to something. The famous thing what happened to Babaji Maharaj when he walks through and he finds he is walking through a street he is not supposed to walk through. And Lalaji says, what are you doing? Babaji has walked through that street in constant remembrance, he has forgotten. And then Lalaji says, now having come here, clean the place. So these are all things which happen to all of us, but how quick we accept our folly maybe is a good way to take us towards being, as Daji quotes Babaji very often. It's all right for you to think you are great, but think that the other person is greater. So this is one point which I wanted to share, though there are several others. But this is one thing which has recently, last few years, I have not just kept it under check, I have maybe understood and internalized to a great extent. It's a folly to think that One, you know everything. Second, you can know everything. Suppose that answers the question.
Thank you, brother. Second question. The goal of Sahaj practice can also be defined as attaining self-mastery. Having known Daji personally for many years, from his pre-master years as an Abhyasi to becoming appointed as the successor of Chariji, and today assuming the mantle as the master, please could you share your perspective of Daji's nature, character traits, and changes that he has brought upon himself in attaining the highest goal of human life?
So I haven't seen Babaji Maharaj. So I really don't know what Chariji Maharaj had to go through in terms of taking the mantle and carrying on. But all of us, almost all those in the screen today, in one way or another have seen who Chariji Maharaj is. Such a versatile personality. Not just for the sake of it, but literally there is no single topic in this world that he cannot speak about. I have seen him in several conversations with people from varied fields. Once there was a person who was a physicist who was working with NASA. And when he came and the kind of conversations, highly scientific, technical conversations, it was all for us flying above our head. We were sitting and watching. And that person left really astounded, saying that I never, when he came out, he's still in the mission, he's a preceptor also. He said, Prakash, this person amazes me. When you live along such a giant of a personality, it's very, very, very easy for people, specifically Abhyasis, practitioners, to tend to compare and make our own graveyard to our size. When he was announced a successor on the 3rd October 2011, we have a good connection from the past. From the time I joined the mission, when I first met him, subsequently, it so happened that in Garden of Arts, which is the flats opposite Manapakam Ashram, we all stayed in the same ground floor in D block. He was our neighbor, not even knowing who he was supposed to become. Those days was very, very, very witty, charming, jovial person. The kind of jokes he could cut, the humor, fun-loving. Fun-loving doesn't mean he'll change. What I'm saying that happy-go-lucky rather. And later, towards around 2005 or 2006, he decided to settle full-time in India to be with Chariji Maharaj. And then he became a little bit more inwardly drawn. I wouldn't call it serious, but maybe he was being prepared. I don't know. But I always had a relationship. I continue to have one, mainly because we are neighbors. And some of the way in which I used to work, he liked. Specifically, whenever he was away, specifically after 2005-06, when he was in the US. Whenever he wanted to talk to Chariji Maharaj, I used to be the first person he used to call on the mobile. If I am not around Chariji Maharaj, then I'll tell him who is there and then he will call. And there was some kind of a connection, vibration, kind of stuff we seem to have in some way. And when he was announced as a successor, and within a few months I was appointed as his secretary officially. A lot of work that I had to do, specifically when Chariji Maharaj was not keeping well. A lot of administrative work, a lot of spiritual work, weddings, things like that he used to do. Spiritual work, of course, he used to teach a lot. He was very, very, very forthcoming in sharing spiritual and technical knowledge. Many of us know it. Everyone today on the screen, if you are a trainer, you are called a preceptor these days. But in those days, there were two classifications, prefect and a preceptor. he doesn't hold back. Today, everyone by default is made a preceptor, which means you are given access for all the work that the full preceptors of those days could do. Not only that, he brought some of his very successful thinking and business practices into spreading the method, what we currently call as heartfulness. I have seen the metamorphosis that happened to him, to our own system, the reach that he has created through the works that he has done, path-breaking works. He's a very big visionary. Chariji was also a visionary. But if you take Daji, he has a different kind of a vision and the way of thinking. Initially, he was a very shy, even today, he is a very shy person. I know him to some extent. But due to his current expositions, he doesn't have a choice. He has to mix with people. I mean, just to give you an anecdote, those days from Garden of Arts, he will normally never walk through the front side of the meditation hall, those who have seen. He will take the second gate and walk through the back side of the meditation hall and go to the cottage. He was shy, not that he wanted to avoid people. And even when he walks, he'll put his cap down and walk looking at the floor so that people don't come and talk to him. And these days, it's not possible. So those changes and the workloads that he has taken, of course, it seems to be impacting his health here and there. Even today, he said he has those bouts of vertigo and all that. But the metamorphosis I've seen in that the son who now overtakes the father, which is what in Tamil we also say. The father should be proud from wherever he is to see that his son is overtaking. There's no competition there. They only say, wow, as they say, wow, what a job done. I'm very sure the hierarchy who's watching is, in my view, is just begin the innings, just about 7 years. You will see some more astounding growths, strides that he takes. He is so focused on the growth of the mission that he cannot imagine. Every conversation he has, everything invariably brings him back to how it can. There is no separate pastime he has. I have known him for several years, close to 2 decades plus. He didn't have a TV in his home. He used to watch movies with Chariji Maharaj because Chariji liked it. And he used to sit because Chariji liked it. For whatever reason. But he never has, even today he doesn't have it. He has a TV to watch maybe Zoom calls these days. That's all. He doesn't watch programs. He doesn't read newspapers. Never. Very, very rarely, very important news. Sometimes when Chariji reads, he may just take a peek. He doesn't read newspapers. He says it's a waste of time. But the amount of literature he reads is astounding. Astounding. There's many of us think that he's putting us through what is the preceptors in the refresher programs or when they're being made a preceptor. The amount of literature we are reading, we all think, I've seen some preceptors complaining, it looks like a school examination, jokingly. But I have seen even those days, he could literally, not just recite, he could quote verbatim from any books of any of the masters. Lalaji, Babuji, Chariji, he could quote. It's written in this book here, it's quoted here. Chariji used to jokingly say, if he has a doubt in literature, he'll say, call Kamlesha on a topic. To such an extent, he was a master of research market literature. Of course, he's also a very widely read person. He has a huge appetite for good music, things like that. But what I have seen is the blossoming of a young disciple chosen, anointed during the lifetime of his master, taking over the mantle with a huge personality shadow in which he has to grow out and grow big. He has taken all that in his strides. And it has been a tremendous metamorphosis which is still unfolding. And some of us know, many of us, even whatever I am saying, I am like the 5 blind men who are looking at an elephant. I see a wall, I see a tail, I see a tusk, that's all. I don't see the elephant yet. But I know for sure that the people up there will be too happy with him. very, very, very happy the way in which he has taken and shaped. See, masters literally, their job is sort of a loner, though they have the hierarchy to support. At a human plane, once I remember I was having a conversation with him, once he moved to Hyderabad, I still stay in Chennai, I only keep going, and unfortunately last 1.5 years due to pandemic, our interactions will have been only on Zoom and emails and occasional phone calls he calls for administrative work. Once he said, and we started some conversation, he said to Prakash, keep coming more often so that I can have conversations like this. Because I need people, because they're not with all I can speak everything. I'm not sharing it as a credit or whatever, but as a plight of a man who is at such a supreme level that when he wants to check something, at that level, they are loners. So to many extent, the decisions that they have to take, many of us Abhyasis practitioners don't understand the depth or the implication of what it means. A master, when he takes a decision, it spans 5-7 generations ahead. Whereas we may be looking, for example, effects in administrative change. It keeps happening all the time. I have been removed from a post several times. I have been put back in some other post later also. Even today, it keeps happening to all of us all the time. There are changes, continuous changes. But the immediate question is, like the famous story, the two friends were there. How much do you like me? He said, I like you so much. Whatever I have, I will give it to you. So the friend asked him, if you have 2 homes, what will you do? I'll give you the other home. He said, if you have 2 cars, what will you do? I'll give you the other car. If he says, we have 2 pens, what will you do? He said, no, I'll hold back both the pens. He said, why only 2 pens? Because these are 2 pens I surely have. The others I don't have. So we all want to give what we don't have. We don't give what we have. So that life is sort of that way, in some sense. We all, when we get hurt by his decisions, we don't see the longevity. If you have a country in charge and the country in charge is changed, the person who is the country in charge will get upset. But when your neighboring country is charged, you say, what a master's do. This is exactly what should happen. We all say that. Even I would say that if I'm removed, I don't know. So their life is, one Charaji beautifully said, I wear a crown of unlimited thorns. I have nothing but a crown of unlimited thorns. And the same is true for Daji as well. Empathy for the master is not easy, because first of all, to empathize, you have to understand what the person is going through. If Abhyasis can empathize, nothing like it, but we may not be capable of empathizing. At least an unconditional love and bhakti for the incarnate master, though they will never ask for it openly, might help them in the job. And if we stop judging the decisions that he makes and just follow suit, not easy at all. Chariji once mentioned in the presence of Daji that, see, when people from outside throw stones, I don't mind. But when people from inside the house throw stones, it's difficult to digest. He was speaking about somebody doing something those days which was very unfaithful. And he was deeply hurt for a day or so. Then he got over it. Masters at that level, they quickly get over it. But he mentioned that when people from outside throw stones, it's okay. I know anyway, I don't expect them to support me. But someone who has lived with me, understood for 10, 20 years, that's something it becomes. So if people, if at all there is something that we can do, is to follow him with the complete faith that they can see much farther ahead than what we can ever collectively see. So the question that you gave was how we transformed. I think I have meandered and come where to the question is. One great personality has given rise to another one. And we are all fortunate to have such a capable incarnate master. Make best use. That's it.
Thank you, brother. Question 3, we've covered some of it in the last question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What do you think were some of the greatest challenges faced by Daji, and how did he overcome them?
I wouldn't say acceptance of him. That was more or less done thanks to Chariji's foresighted approach of giving him 2-3 years to settle in, which was not the case I heard for Chariji Maharaj. But the answer to this question is there in the earlier answer I gave. People continuously, consciously or subconsciously, are evaluating what a master does. At that level, we don't need to speak a word. You don't even need to be in front of him. You don't need to send a mail. You don't need to do nothing. The resonance automatically carries to them. Just because I am sitting in Chennai, you are sitting in some part of Malaysia, making a thought that master shouldn't have done this, it immediately resonates. Even at a human level, we resonate with people whom we like. We avoid people whom we don't like. It's normal, and we can smell it. There are times when I used to enter my home even before I become a Abhyasi. I know I should enter home. When I enter, I find there is some relative or some friend whom I don't want to see who's sitting there. It sort of creates a vibratory field. And Chariji once beautifully said that Abhyasi's vibratory field instantly reaches the heart of the master. And hence, if there is one thing that we can really do to avoid his challenge, is acceptance, not even cheerful acceptance. He said even cheerful means you have been grudging once to be cheerful. Just accept. Takes a lot of time. But if the soldiers keep asking questions to the general every time about the moves that the general is making, and here the general is far, far, far from a higher plane that we can ever contemplate. The master is always one step ahead of you, if not more, in terms of his spiritual position, come what may. Even though Babaji has once said, I have now put you beyond myself. That was his humility. They're always ahead, and I can say, based on my own experience, I have done that stupid mistake several times of judging his decisions, both with Chariji and with Daji also. Though it's going on record, I have no qualms in accepting, because after all, he knows. And that is something that we can spare him. And that is one challenge, specifically functionaries and volunteers. If we can spare him, I think that would be a great help we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Fourth question. What are some of the best advices that you have received from Daji that had an incredible and transformational impact on your life?
There are many, but I'll share one which was sort of a straight hit, which I never understood, maybe throughout the life I spent with Chariji Maharaj. It was through 2-3 years later in Kana, in one of the functions. I always used to hang around with him, and I thought, being his secretary, which I continue to be as of today, that is sort of a birthright. I didn't think that way, but I thought, okay, it's all right. After all, I'm his secretary. If I'm there, maybe I can do a job. And in one of the talks, he gave a straight knock by naming me. Straight. Of course, he was very considerate that that portion of the talk was removed when it was uploaded. Still there in YouTube, but that portion was removed later. He said he doesn't understand the samskaras he is creating to others when he's projecting an image that is close to me. That was like a huge, I wouldn't call it a slap or a knock. That moment was, for me, it was transformative. It's like, even when doing your work, do it in such a way that you don't create samskaras in others. Even so what you are a functionary, so what you are a zonal coordinator. So what, you are a regional coordinator or a country coordinator. So what, whatever you are. But whatever you do, even if one single abhyasi develops a samskara or the feeling that this functionary is doing this, and that in some way puts a gap between them and the master. When I was projecting that image that I was close to him, maybe somebody else felt I'm not as close to master as Prakash is. And that may be strengthening that person's point B, guilt or anger or jealousy or whatever. Took me a lot of time to get out of that mode of wanting to be physically next to him, even subconsciously. But that was one of the best indirect. See, Charity always used to mention, Daji used to demonstrate, the best of advice meant for you will never come straight to you. Very, very, very rarely it comes straight to you. It always be packaged. It will always be delivered through somebody or by somebody. But when you unpackage it and look at the gift which is inside, you will find that there is a gem that the master sent you for your transformation. So for me, I think that sums up the answer to your question.
Fifth question. What are some of your proven effective methods or tools for keeping track of our spiritual progress that you would recommend for us to achieve our goals?
I'll be an antithesis to this question. I said, forget all that, it's a waste of time. It's like a fish being in an ocean, finding out which part of the ocean I am in. It's not your problem, don't worry about it. In these intellectual questions, in my view, I lost track of that relevance long ago. Though intuitively we all feel at some point of time, what is your position or what's your current condition, and how does it matter really? It actually doesn't matter. Actually speaking, even at point one, you can have a pralaya and merge with him. It's up to him. And there are people who have been at the highest levels who have fallen at the time of death, which is all documented. I don't want to name, you all know, even it happened during the time of Babaji Maharaj, subsequently also. The only technique, if at all, make the goal and him as your only obsession. Forget about what is your position, what is your condition, what is your approach. All that, in my view, is blah, blah. You can lose it anytime. After all, he has given it to you. And he once famously said, if I tell you today you are in 11th point, and what is the guarantee you won't fall tomorrow? There are people who have fallen. There have been hundreds and hundreds of stories right from ancient times when rishis of the highest caliber fall with just one temptation. So in my view, ideally speaking, though 90-day practice is about intensifying practice, but don't focus too much about what is your progress. Even to think, am I making a progress, is, in my view, sacrilege. How can we even think if the master is giving us progress or not? What else can he give you? It's like asking a mother, you are not feeding me. Mother knows what to feed you, when to feed you. Maybe the quantities might be slightly, for example, you like your mother's food is tasty, you want to eat more. It's like a condition in which you want to dive deeper. But like what Babaji Maharaj said about STK or crossing the chit, he said it's like dwelling in cow dung. It's such an insult to a condition which everyone, literally every ancient literature craves for. He says it's like cow dung. It's like a bee in a cow dung or whatever. And in my view, to a great extent with certainty, I can say that I have given up all the worries of where I am, what my approach is, what is the condition. If I am able to feel the condition, I write it in my diary, forget it, move on. So focus on the goal, do his work as much as possible, whether it's 1 minute or 1 hour, put your heart and soul. Leave the rest to him. I mean, if he is the creator, doesn't he know what to do with you? I hope it answers.
Yes, thank you.
I'll duck the last question and move on to what Ramesh had in mind. I have a different proposition to that. If there are no questions.
We have a few more questions before we come to that.
Good, good.
Okay. How do you bring a balance in your life? And what is your secret of managing your time so efficiently while having such high profile and important roles in the corporate world, Heartfulness organization, being a best-selling author, trainer, and perhaps more importantly, being a family man?
See, in Tamil there is a saying, iduvum kadanda pogum. In English it translates as this too shall pass. Time management and life management is a topic I have been taking for 30-35 years for corporates. I have coached them and all that. So initially I used to worry a lot about how am I going to manage time, how am I going to segment. But when I found out in a down-flowing river, if you are in a raft and with a right guide, once I went for a whitewater rafting in a river long ago, and the person said, "Sir, don't worry about what happens to you. Just enjoy the ride. If you're going to fall, we'll save you. Don't worry. There'll be rocks, there'll be things. Nobody has ever died. There could be a couple of bruises here and there." He said, "Don't forget to enjoy the ride. Do not worry will you reach the other side. Will I fall?" Because when you look from outside, what whitewater rafting looks so aggressive, it looks dangerous. But when I went and came out, what he said was true. We were somewhere, we were thrown off. And we all had lifeguards. Of course, I knew swimming, there's no need. Within a couple of seconds, he immediately pulled us 1 or 2. Likewise, if your ultimate goal is clear, I don't worry about managing time or anything about it. I enjoy the moment, not just live the moment, I enjoy the moment. There may be a clock hanging somewhere, there may be a calendar hanging somewhere to show me the date. But why bother? What are you going to achieve anyway? There's a famous quote in English: at the end of a game of chess, both the king and the pawn goes back to the same box. We all will hit the graveyard, either burnt or buried. Why bother? Enjoy the flow, maintaining your internal and external calm. Never waver away from character. As I said, that is one thing I am 200% sure. It's been very well imbibed by both Chariji and Daji. Thanks to some upbringing of the kind of families I've grown up. I have absolutely, I would say, no baggages that I need to hide when somebody is watching. When you have an open book of life, when there's nothing that you have to worry about. So what if your boss says you haven't done your work? Have you done your best is the question. If the question asks, have you done the work? Have you done the best? I handle 8 to 10 hours of mission work. Another 5 to 6 hours of my business coaching work and whatever. I have about 7 hours left for myself. I sleep for about 4.5 hours. I give about 1.5 to 2 hours for my family. Not always in exact propositions, keep changing. In between, I mix and match both. Little bit of more time for family, lesser time. Something will manage somewhere. I mean, there is no life and death work that I am personally doing. I am not an ICU doctor. Why bother about the additional few minutes of managing? And who created time after all? Man created it. No, before man came, the concept of time didn't exist. We created for our own sake of tracking movements between 2 events and created the unit of time. I don't think animals bother about time. If you ask a lion or an elephant, does it say that morning 7:30 is breakfast for me? When it's hungry, it gets up, runs. The vegetarian, it eats some shrubs and leaves, whatever. If it's a lion or carnivorous, it just hunts. Why can't we just be simple? After all, that's what our maxim says, be simple and in tune with nature. To a great extent, I think here and there, I can't say I've absolutely overcome that. Here and there, there'll be a couple of, specifically with a huge celebration. Specifically, I handle certain sensitive portfolios like managing meditation, all things like that. There'll be a couple of anxious moments here and there. But even then, later I find out it's like a ant falling on the back of an elephant and asking, did I hurt you? Many times we thinking that we are managing the largest show of a celebration is a folly. I learned to enjoy life. That's what I would tell people. If you do your best, time is just you don't bother, it doesn't bother. Well, highest level, this is the input I would give, but if you are a paid coachee, I'll put you through a different process in a corporate world.
Thanks.
That's it.
I'm looking forward to your answer to the next one. Please tell us more about your role as the secretary to Daji. What's it like, and some interesting or unusual experiences that you have encountered while working with him?
There are tasks which I can talk about. There are tasks I cannot talk about. I mean, if you are a bookkeeper of accounts in an organization, the chairman has trusted, the board has trusted you with, though you know everything, you may not be able to talk about it. But what I do learn is there are people with varied interest who approach him through various means. Functionaries, volunteers, abhyasis, first-time seekers. So there are ways and means in which we have to enable a lot by keeping him free to do bigger work, better work. One thing I teach in corporate life to many of the CEOs I coach is don't get into micromanagement. If you make a master to micromanage at a human level, at a spiritual level, what he does, that's his problem. He may take on abhyasi, make him stay with him for a week, give him sitting. That is something which we will never be able to completely understand. But at an administrative level, one thing that I have learned, both in my unofficial post and official post that I've been holding now, it's almost 10 years, close to 10 years, I would say, 9 years completed of me holding the post of secretary to president. One thing that is very clear is the only objective I always have, how can I lessen the load on him, both administratively and spiritually. While responding or managing his work, we had to ensure people, based on the other talk that he gave, which I mentioned just now, ensure people don't develop samskaras because of your interaction with them. They shouldn't feel belittled. They shouldn't feel that so-and-so is blocking my access to my masters and things like that. So it is a hypersensitive area of work. You need to be sensitive, yet you can't react, which means many times you will have to dive deep into resources that have never been accessed before and stay calm. Because you are just a go-between. Any functionary, leave alone me, any functionary, any preceptor, even the preceptors are called the arteries of the mission. The role of the arteries is to allow the blood to flow to the heart and back to the organs. The artery cannot say, I will block you. Likewise, the roles that we all have, the biggest is how fast we can facilitate, being the least hindrance, and also keeping a focus on his energy and time, so that we don't make him run around in circles. All of us can increase his load in more time. One of the functionary reaches out to him in some way or another and asks for support. Though he might chide you, he will still be, in all probability, giving you some kind of guidance, either directly or indirectly. That's why Charaji used to quote Babaji Maharaj, make the master happy and see what wonders he can do. And for him to be happy, you have to give him free time. And for him to get free time, the preceptors and functionaries and volunteers have to make lesser and lesser load on him. Thinking that, what would a master do in this position? If the heart says follow, if the person rebels, then see what is the call you have to take. That's all.
Anything unusual you could share? Supernatural, perhaps.
See, there are many. I mean, anything I say can be turned as a miracle, and that can be held against a master. So it's better that I don't. I have umpteen experience. You cannot imagine the kind of it. But it's better that they remain in my personal realms. Because even if I share one, oh, master is capable of this, why he didn't do for me? Oh, he could have done that for me. Oh, no, this is a miracle. Oh, you are one more miracle organization, is it? The highest miracle that they do is human transformation. So let's leave that job alone, their focus. I know what he has transformed me into from the time I joined in 1992. What I have, at least my family will tell. Maybe others who are from outside may not know. Others will say how I have transformed, and that, in my view, is the most unnatural. An untamed animal to a tamed, evolved human being.
Well noted, brother. Two more questions to go. Can you explain or describe the kind of relationship that Daji had with his guide, Chariji?
It was very personal in one way. Daji used to be quite forthcoming. I don't know how many of you are aware, even before he was announced as a successor for quite a few years, he held the role of the ombudsman in the mission. Some of you may be aware. And which also meant he was sort of the go-between for people who wanted to share a problem about the mission, about the functionary, or about themselves. And he was able to handle it with a lot of, I would say, penchant. He could always smell Chariji's taste ahead. It was not easy. I mean, Chariji was a very, I would say, he was a master. And you think you have understood is when you understand you haven't understood. He was bang on. The lot of work that he has done in shaping the initial, the Whispers work, many of the projects that the moment Chariji had in mind, he would give it shape and bring it to fruition. I've seen, I mean, we all count and give when it comes to donation. There have been times I have known that he literally was the sole donor for many projects. And not even once he'll come out and say, I gave a check. So way back in 95, after the then Golden Jubilee celebrations of the mission, which was held in Manapaka, Chariji was sitting and talking. Daji was also there. That's when his mind had focused on the 99 Babaji Memorial. And he was thinking about, and the project those days was very, very huge for the then mission standards. And Daji asked him very simply, there were only 2-3 of us inside the room, very close to a conversation. So he said, how much would it cost? Chariji took it seriously and gave a number. And immediately took out his checkbook from his bag. He always used to carry a shoulder bag. He wrote a check for the full amount. Literally in that moment, Chariji had tears in his eyes. I could see. I said, Kamlesh, you can't do this. You are denying the opportunity of people participating. And then he made it literally a people's movement where everyone, we all remember those who were at the time. We had the gold coin scheme, the silver coin scheme, various amounts, and we all participated in one way or another. Chariji used to quote that very often in so many places. Not because he threw money and he wanted to prove he had money. But how many people have money? Give it. This was just one aspect. In every aspect, he wanted to lessen the load. I remember once we took Chariji for a haircut in a 5-star salon, 3 of us only. I took Chariji in my car and Daji was in the back seat. We went. And we two were sitting and watching Chariji being given a haircut, and Chariji was whistling away. He seriously said, I feel like slapping that barber. I was wondering what happened. He said, see, every time he is cutting his hair, he is pushing his head. I mean, when a barber, he pushes and turns to suit his movement. I was wondering, how come a person is so sensitive to the pain? It doesn't even pain when a hairstylist is working on you. I don't think it pains when he turns your head. Right? To that extent, his focus was on him even those days. His focus was only the master of the mission all the time, even today. These are all things we all can imbibe, not very hard to emulate. Maybe at a monetary level difficult, but at a spiritual level, as a volunteer, I don't think it's very difficult. Even today, the number of foot soldiers he has compared to the vision that he has is nothing. How many of us are there? 14,000 preceptors, another 50,000 volunteers, 7.3 billion, 730 crores of people to cover and make them understand heartfulness. It's not easy. So he had multiple talents which are all blossoming one after another. And right now he's like one of those Kalyana Purushas, you can say, completely blossomed into. That's all.
Thank you, brother. The final question. We all know you can sing. You care to share something with us today? I'm sure the global audience would be very happy to hear you belt out something, one of your tunes that maybe you sung for Shariji.
All I would say is, that's what I said, I'm going to preempt that question. I'll only share an anecdote pertaining to that, because after speaking for 2 hours, the voice is not ready. You need a fresh voice for that.
Okay.
And anyway, I've sent a link to Ramesh where he can share, where I've recorded a one program only on songs and connecting to spirituality. Of course, we have to know Tamil. But I remember an incident once, 95, just after marriage. I was traveling. I was one of his official companion for a few years then. We landed in Delhi. It was seething hot, middle of May. It was like 44, something like that, 44 degrees centigrade. And fortunately, there was an ABS who had brought a car which was high-end, good AC. He was sitting in the front seat and his usual left side front seat. And the ABS he was driving was playing a popular song which had just been released in Hindi. A movie called Hum Aapke Hum. What Am I to You, kind of. There was a song called Pehla Pehla Pyar Hai. My first love, kind of a song. And I was singing along without knowing that I'm singing. The song was nice. And as soon as the song ended, he turned back and we were speaking in Tamil. With me, he always prefers to speak in Tamil unless it's an official communication. So you asked, oh, you're thinking about your wife and singing, is it? She should have been your first love. I told him, no, master, she is my second love. He was literally shocked. He just literally turned from his seat. Even those days, he used to wear seatbelt, which was not compulsory then. He said, he used a Tamil word, cursing me literally and saying, I never knew your wife was your second love. I said, of course, master, you are my first. And then he said, you sale, something like that he said. And in that tour, I sang a lot of songs I used to be in the same room where he used to sleep. Few of the songs I still recall that I used to sing. He used to like. Singing to him is not easy for a simple reason. He was a great musician himself. He can easily spot the mistakes he makes. Of course, with us, he was very benevolent. He was a great musician, which was known to all of us. He could play flute, and his whistles were absolutely out of the world. The then leading flutist, Mali, used to come and tell him, Chari, the way you whistle, if you play the flute, I have to quit this profession. He was so good. And singing to him was privilege. And we were more like his children. I had no inhibitions moving with him or talking to him. The same inhibitions I have none with Taji as well. In fact, with masters, we should have no inhibitions. Not arrogance, but should not have any inhibitions. And it used to be always, I have sung a few lullabies for him in the nights. Not that always I get a chance, but I'll hum. Sometimes you will say sing, sing. That's it. Someday maybe yes, we'll have a program around that. But sorry to disappoint you on that. My voice at this moment is not ready for it.
Understood, brother. It's 7:30 in Malaysia. We have reached the end of our program, brother. On behalf of the global audience, I would like to thank you so much for your time, for the effort that you have taken, okay, for sharing all those wonderful experiences, anecdotes, those wonderful insights. I personally feel you have brought the essence of Daji to me, to this living room that I'm here. Thank you so much, brother. To our audience,
Ramesh, would you like to say something? Because I'm seeing him leading forward.
Yes, Ramesh.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Thank you, brother. It was really marvelous to hear all these wonderful stories. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think we're all blessed to have you with us. And please join us more often in our programs. We really feel truly blessed to have this opportunity. Thank you so much.
I wish that when pandemic settles, I would maybe make a trip and be with you all also. I love that part of the world. I've been there 4 or 5 times, twice on business as well. I have clients, used to have clients in Kuala Lumpur and in other areas. I hope that things become all right where we can meet in person as well. It has been a wonderful opportunity. And thanks for about close to 2 hours staying back and listening. It was really marvelous.
You're always welcome. You're most welcome. And the next time when you will come to Malaysia, we will not leave you. You will have to sing for us.
This is my songbook.
Thank you so much, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sisters and brothers, thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm sure you all enjoyed today's session. There's a lot of takeaways that Brother Prakash shared with us. I hope your remaining days of the 90-day challenge would be a fruitful one for everyone. I wouldn't be able to end today's session without mentioning what Daji spoke about. He made a plea to all Abhiasis to give him some space. So let us all earnestly and fervently pray for his well-being, for his recovery, for his good health. Thank you all so much for joining. Look forward to see you all next week. Thank you.